The ballroom was filled with light and the melodious sounds of jazz music. Waiters moved in synchronized lines. A step and repeat wall flashed with camera bulbs as Lauren Parker, my younger sister, posed beside Harbor Ridge Capital's managing partners, like she'd personally invented growth. It was her inauguration night as CEO of Parker Dynamics. My name wasn't on the digital program looping across the ballroom screens. Co-founder, chief systems architect, majority shareholder. There was absolutely no recognition whatsoever. Honestly, I just want to get out of here and go home to curl up under a warm blanket because I'm so cold. I wonder what the temperature is where you are right now if you're still here. Please tell me your lucky number. But I'm still here, continuing to witness the drama that's about to unfold. I stood near the back, holding a champagne flute I hadn't touched. Investors brushed past me to congratulate Lauren. Lauren stepped up to the podium, flawless and glowing under stage lighting designed to flatter. "New leadership requires new energy," she said, smiling at the crowd. Applause. Predictable. Then her eyes found me. "And sometimes," she added, "that means letting go of legacy roles." A ripple of polite laughter. "Security will escort my sister out. Effective immediately. 200 people. No sound. Not shock calculation." My parents sat front row. They stared straight ahead. I felt it then, not surprise, not even anger, just the sharp, deliberate sting of being erased in public. I set my untouched champagne on a passing tray. "Just to be clear, Lauren, you're terminating me as of this moment," she tilted her head. "Don't make this dramatic." "Alice." "Oh," I said calmly, "I won't." Security hovered, unsure whether to intervene. I saved them the trouble and walked toward the exit myself, heels steady against marble. The orchestra resumed playing. "Before we continue, I want to be clear with you. The story you're about to hear is a blend of real workplace situations and fictional elements, with artificial intelligence used to deepen the emotional experience and help deliver the message. 12 years ago, I made a decision my father barely noticed, while Lauren negotiated for titles and press coverage. I declined a salary and converted every bonus into equity. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't glamorous. It was paperwork. My father signed the amendments during halftime of a playoff game. Skimming nothing, trusting everything. Lauren called me paranoid. I called it ownership. That was when I drafted Clause 9A. The language was simple and legally clean. If a CEO who does not hold majority equity terminates the controlling shareholder without formal board approval, executive authority automatically reverts. No theatrics, no interpretation. Control flips back by operation of contract. Back in the ballroom, while the band resumed playing and guests pretended not to stare. Lauren's phone vibrated. The general counsel's name flashed across Lauren's screen first. I watched from the lobby as she answered, still smiling for optics. "Did you just remove the controlling shareholder?" counsel asked. Lauren rolled her eyes. "She's just my sister." A pause. "She's 53%. That landed differently. Lauren's posture shifted. Investors nearby stopped laughing. The CFO stepped away to check his phone. The board chair excused himself mid-conversation. Because Clause 9A doesn't care about sibling rivalry. It cares about voting thresholds. Within minutes, Harbor Ridge Capital received a formal governance alert, potential change of control, triggered by improper termination. Regulatory notice pending review. The music inside continued. Outside, the structure had already begun to move. The shift from humiliation to financial tension happened in under 10 minutes. I was still in the hotel lobby when the CFO rushed past the velvet ropes. Phone pressed to his ear. Color draining from his face. He didn't see me at first. He saw Lauren. "Our stock just triggered a governance flag," he said sharply. Lauren laughed once. "Brittle. What does that even mean?" "It means the exchange picked up a control irregularity." Her smile vanished. "This is sabotage." "No, it was compliance. Under SEC regulations, any material change involving controlling interest must be disclosed immediately. Clause 9A had already activated. I submitted the required Form 8K electronically from my phone before I reached the elevators. The filing timestamp mattered. It proved sequence. It proved legitimacy. Upstairs. Phones began vibrating across the ballroom. Investors stepped away from dessert tables. The board chair's assistant was already refreshing the trading dashboard. Then it happened. Trading halt pending review. The company's ticker froze mid-scroll. Lauren's voice carried across the room. Reverse the termination. Now. The general counsel didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. You can't undo a recorded action. Lauren snapped back. It was a ceremony. It was documented. The difference is expensive. The CFO was now pacing. If the halt extends into tomorrow's session, we're looking at volatility exposure. Harbor Ridge will not like this. Lauren tried another angle. Issue a clarification. Say it was symbolic. The general counsel replied evenly. You terminated the controlling shareholder on record. The exchange doesn't process symbolism. Guests were no longer pretending not to stare. Within minutes, the board chair stepped aside to take a call. When he returned, his expression had changed from confusion to calculation. Emergency session, he announced quietly. We convene immediately. Not next week, not tomorrow. Right here, at the hotel. The orchestra stopped mid-song, and just like that, my sister's celebration turned into a governance crisis. The emergency session didn't feel corporate. It felt personal. We moved from the glittering ballroom into a private conference suite upstairs, the kind hotels reserve for mergers and quiet damage control. The board chair called the meeting to order, with a voice that was steady but tight. Around the table sat directors, legal counsel, the CFO, and my sister still in her inauguration dress, still refusing to believe the ground had shifted. Lauren leaned toward me before anyone else spoke. Her voice dropped to a sharp whisper. You're embarrassing the family. I met her eyes. No, I'm correcting it. That was the fracture line, not the clause, not the stock halt, us. The board chair cleared his throat. Given the governance trigger and potential regulatory exposure, we are opening a vote to temporarily suspend the CEO's authority pending review. Lauren's head snapped up. You can't be serious. This is my first night. It's also a recorded termination of the controlling shareholder. The general counsel replied evenly. Lauren turned to me again. Withdraw the filing. Fix it. I can't undo sequence. I said calmly. Neither can you. She straightened, anger replacing panic. If this goes through, I will sue you personally. Breach of loyalty, abuse of influence. I'll drag this out for years. You can try, I answered. The electronic voting screen lit up at the end of the table. Percentages began to climb in real time. 55%. Lauren's jaw tightened. 63%. The CFO stopped pretending to check emails. 70%. The board chair folded his hands. Motion to suspend passes threshold. Lauren pushed back her chair. Harbor Ridge will never allow this. As if summoned by name. The board chair's phone buzzed. He read the message silently, then looked up at her, not unkindly, but without protection. Harbor Ridge will not indemnify executive actions if a regulatory investigation expands. He said. The words hung there. My sister wasn't just losing authority, she was losing cover. Suspension did not make Lauren quiet. It made her reckless. By morning, she had scheduled a press conference in the same hotel ballroom where she'd tried to erase me. Cameras lined the back wall. Reporters leaned forward, sensing blood. Lauren stood at the podium, posture rigid, voice sharpened into performance. My sister has manipulated internal systems to stage a coup, she said. Her behavior has been unstable for months. Unstable. The word was chosen carefully, personal enough to wound, vague enough to avoid defamation. I watched the live stream from my office. When she finished, I released the archive I had prepared overnight. Internal emails, time-stamped, board-blind copies, strategy drafts, in them. Lauren outlined a day one reset, including language like, remove Alice before she complicates capital restructuring, and We'll deal with equity optics later. Nothing emotional, nothing dramatic, just intent. Within an hour, financial journalists were quoting her own words back at her. The narrative shifted from sister rivalry to premeditated removal of a controlling shareholder. That was when the calls from family began. My mother's name flashed across my screen. I answered. "Is this really necessary?" she asked quietly. "You're tearing each other apart in public." "Mom," I said evenly, "I didn't start this. She's your sister. She terminated me on record." Silence lingered between us, not agreement, not condemnation, just exhaustion. Meanwhile, investors began asking different questions, not about optics, about disclosure, about whether Lauren had informed the board of her intent before accepting the CEO role. By late afternoon, another message circulated, this one not from me. The SEC had opened a preliminary inquiry into potential conflicts of interest tied to Lauren's appointment and communications with Harbor Ridge before her inauguration. It wasn't a charge, not yet. But it was formal, and formal changes everything. If you believe releasing those documented emails and letting regulators review the facts was the right move. Leave a 1 in the comments. Your voice matters more than you think. Because public accountability only works when people are willing to stand behind it. Power doesn't disappear, it relocates. By the second trading day after the halt, retail shareholders were no longer passive spectators. Message boards lit up. Proxy advisory firms issued cautionary notes. Analysts began using phrases like governance instability and fiduciary exposure. Small shareholders might not control large blocks, but they control sentiment, and sentiment moves markets. The stock resumed trading under volatility restrictions. It dipped hard in the first hour. That was when Harbor Ridge intervened. A formal letter went out to the board recommending that Lauren step aside temporarily to preserve fund stability and mitigate reputational risk. The language was polite. The message wasn't. Lauren refused. "This is fear-driven overreaction," she told the board during a closed call. "If I resign now, it looks like admission. It looks like containment," the board chair corrected. Meanwhile, shareholder emails flooded in demanding clarification. Several institutional holders requested a special meeting. The pressure wasn't emotional, it was financial. I attended that meeting in person. The ballroom had been rearranged into a shareholder forum. No music, no champagne, just microphones and spreadsheets. Lauren stood at one podium. I stood at another, when it was my turn. I didn't raise my voice. I never left governance. I said clearly, I was removed illegally. The termination triggered contractual reversion under Clause 9A. The filings were mandatory, not optional. A murmur ran through the room. Lauren responded quickly. "She engineered this. I enforced it." I replied. The difference mattered. Investors began asking pointed questions. Were there prior discussions about removing the controlling shareholder? Did Harbor Ridge review those communications? Was there disclosure before the CEO transition? Lauren's answers grew shorter. Then the CFO requested to speak. He had been silent since the suspension vote. Now he stepped forward. Holding a printed risk assessment from a financial standpoint, he began carefully. Continued leadership uncertainty combined with a potential SEC inquiry materially increases liability exposure. Lenders have already requested clarification. Lauren stared at him. "You're with me, I'm with the company," he said. That was the shift. He recommended immediate structural stabilization, including recognition of controlling shareholder authority, until the investigation concluded. It wasn't dramatic. It was pragmatic. But pragmatism wins markets. By the end of the session, power had not been reclaimed by applause or emotion. It had moved quietly toward whoever reduced risk. And for the first time since inauguration night, that wasn't Lauren. Family conflict doesn't end when the board meeting adjourns. It follows you into quiet rooms. 2 nights after the shareholder forum, my father asked to meet. Not in the office. Not at the hotel. At the house where Lauren and I grew up. The same dining table where he once signed equity amendments without reading them. He didn't look at either of us for long. "This is between sisters," he said finally. You don't burn the company down to win an argument. I kept my voice steady. I didn't burn anything down. I enforced the contract. Lauren crossed her arms. You weaponized it. Before I could respond, our general counsel spoke from the end of the table. She had joined at the board's request. Not mine. No, she said calmly. This is fiduciary duty. The words changed the temperature in the room. Lauren turned to me. Softer now, calculated instead of furious. We can fix this quietly. Let's split control. Co-CEO structure, public unity. You get operational oversight. I keep the title. I studied her for a moment. This wasn't apology. It was risk management. You already split control, I said evenly, publicly. She flinched, just slightly. The proposed compromise wasn't about fairness. It was about limiting exposure before regulators widened their review. Harbor Ridge had grown quiet. The CFO had begun modeling contingency leadership scenarios. Directors were asking fewer emotional questions and more structural ones. Still, sitting there across from my sister, I felt it, the fracture. Not theatrical, not explosive, just permanent. My father tried again. There has to be a way back. There is. I said, governance. The following morning, the board convened for a formal vote. This time, it wasn't temporary suspension. It was resolution. The board chair outlined the findings: improper termination of controlling shareholder, failure to disclose pre-inauguration removal strategy, escalating regulatory exposure. Lauren's attorney argued procedural technicalities. She did not argue the emails. When the vote opened, no one rushed. 60%, 68, 74. The board chair looked at her directly. Motion carries. CEO appointment rescinded. Effective immediately. Lauren didn't look at me. She looked at our father. And that was when I understood something painful but clear. We hadn't just separated roles. We had separated realities. Collapse rarely sounds dramatic. It sounds like headlines. By the end of the week, every major business outlet carried some variation of the same line. CEO, fired majority owner, lost company in 2 hours. Analysts dissected the governance failure in primetime segments. Commentators debated whether it was arrogance or incompetence. No one debated the facts. Lauren's removal was official. The SEC inquiry remained preliminary, but it was enough. Executive search firms stopped returning her calls. 2 speaking engagements were quietly canceled. An industry panel replaced her name with TBD. Harbor Ridge moved faster. A formal statement announced their decision to terminate advisory and strategic alignment with Lauren effective immediately. Translation: she was no longer their candidate, their narrative, or their liability, internally. I knew why. Funds do not defend volatility. They exit it. The market stabilized once leadership uncertainty cleared. Our stock recovered nearly half of its post-halt dip within 3 sessions. Institutional investors responded to structure, not sentiment. At home, silence replaced argument. My father didn't call. My mother sent a single message: I hope this was worth it. Lauren sent nothing at all. Power had shifted completely now, not just legally, but reputationally. The same board members who applauded her inauguration were now scheduling restructuring meetings under my authority. Yet collapse is not revenge. It is consequence. A week after her removal, Harbor Ridge requested a private discussion with me. Their position in the company had become inconvenient. Regulatory scrutiny tends to cling to names, and they preferred clean exits. We negotiated efficiently. They divested their shares at a discount justified by short-term governance disruption. The language was polite. The valuation was practical. I acquired their block, not to punish, to consolidate. When the transfer cleared, I became not just controlling shareholder, but unchallengeable majority. Lauren lost her title. Harbor Ridge lost their leverage. And for the first time since inauguration night, the company belonged entirely to someone who had actually built it. Power feels different when it is formalized. The board meeting where I officially accepted the role of CEO was quiet, almost clinical. No champagne towers, no orchestras, just binders, legal drafts, and a room that understood what instability had cost us. The board chair read the resolution aloud, appointment confirmed. Effective immediately. I signed once. Clean, deliberate. But titles are temporary. Structures last. Before we adjourn, I said, sliding a revised governance proposal across the table. We fixed the vulnerabilities that allowed this. The amendments were straightforward. No sitting CEO may terminate a controlling shareholder without unanimous board approval. All executive restructuring must require recorded, transparent votes with immediate disclosure. No exceptions labeled as ceremonial. The General Counsel reviewed the language line by line. The CFO calculated potential risk reduction. Directors asked practical questions, not emotional ones. This wasn't a victory speech. It was reinforcement. When discussion slowed, the board chair leaned back slightly and looked at me. Was this personal? The question was fair. I held his gaze. It became structural. A few directors nodded. They understood the distinction. Personal disputes create noise. Structural failures create exposure. The vote to adopt the amendments passed with minimal resistance. Governance reform tends to gain popularity after public embarrassment. There was one final item on the agenda. The board chair cleared his throat. In light of the findings and pending regulatory review, a recommendation has been made regarding future eligibility for executive service. The resolution proposed that Lauren be barred from holding any officer or board position within the company for 5 years. 5 years is a long time in corporate cycles. The vote was not dramatic. It passed. No one applauded. No one argued. When the meeting adjourned, I remained seated for a moment longer. Authority had shifted completely, now not explosively, but permanently. Controlled power is quieter than ambition, and far more durable. 2 months later, the noise was gone. The company didn't feel triumphant. It felt stable. Earnings projections were back within range. Lenders withdrew their enhanced oversight. The stock, after weeks of volatility, had recovered beyond its pre-inauguration level. Analysts shifted their language from governance crisis to disciplined restructuring. Systems prefer order. Lauren left the state quietly. No farewell statement, no counter-narrative. Her industry profile dimmed as quickly as it had flared. The 5-year executive restriction remained in effect, filed and enforceable. Harbor Ridge never mentioned her again in investor calls. At headquarters, I replaced the inauguration banner with a compliance dashboard in the lobby performance metrics, board transparency updates, shareholder voting records, not inspirational quotes, not branding slogans, data. During a quarterly briefing, a reporter raised her hand. "Do you regret fighting your sister?" The room stilled. Not because the question was inappropriate, but because it was inevitable. I didn't hesitate. I regret that she thought I wouldn't. A few pens stopped moving. This was never about revenge. I continued. It was about enforceable structure. Governance exists for the moments when personalities fail. The board chair nodded once. The general counsel remained still. Investors watched numbers on screens, not facial expressions. That was the difference between spectacle and accountability. After the session, I walked through the operations floor. Engineers debated product timelines, finance reviewed forecasts. No one whispered, no one speculated. The system was functioning again, at home. Silence still lingered in family threads. No holidays had been scheduled. No reconciliations drafted. Some fractures remain unaddressed. That is not the company's responsibility. Justice, in business, rarely looks dramatic. It looks documented. Family can choose sides. Contracts don't. I didn't fight my sister because I wanted to win. I fought because contracts mean nothing if you're too afraid to enforce them. There's a difference between staying quiet to keep peace and staying silent while something unjust becomes permanent. I learned that ownership isn't just shares on paper, it's responsibility. Responsibility to the people who depend on the structure you built. Responsibility to yourself when you know you're being erased in public and expected to accept it politely. What would you have done in that ballroom? Would you have walked away to protect the relationship or stood firm to protect the system? There isn't always a clean answer, but there is always a cost to doing nothing. The most valuable lesson for me wasn't about power, it was about clarity. Emotions are loud, documents are quiet, and quiet preparation will outlast public humiliation every time. If you've ever been underestimated, sidelined, or told to not make it dramatic, then you understand that this wasn't revenge, it was accountability. I'm curious, where are you listening from right now? Different states, different countries, but the same moments of decision show up everywhere. If this story meant something to you, don't just move on. One subscription from you helps stories like this reach someone who needs courage. One like or share might help someone rethink what they're willing to tolerate. When you comment, you're not just reacting, you're strengthening a community that believes fairness matters. And that matters more than applause ever will.